Hey guys, this is Grace and welcome back to my channel. We are on process video number 2 for my latest 10 handmade cards, 1 homemade kit video, and we are on to card number 6. Well, with this one, I also wanted to use the stencil. Now this technique, I'm going to be using some metallic luster from Deco Art. This one is kind of similar to a Nouveau Mousse, but it's not as soft. It's not buttery like a Nouveau Mousse, but I just happen to have it on hand in my stash, and so I used it because why not, right? It's already in my stash. So the only thing that I have to say about this kind of product is I think it needs some kind of a sealer because some of the gold flakes is coming off of the paper even after it has completely dried. So that is the only thing. And if you've ever worked with this, let me know if you have any tips for this, because I get some products from companies, but I don't know how to use them. I'm sorry. I am not an expert on everything. So sometimes I get a specific product and I'm totally clueless how to use it, but I'm thinking that I can use this some kind of like a textured paste type. So it's pretty hard. But with my little scraper here that I'm able to get the job done. So of course I'm gonna make sure that I leave this to dry, and then I am going to of course clean my stencil off really well so that it will come off, and then we'll get back onto the card making. So I decided to pull it out right from the beginning because I was afraid that if I leave that there, that the stencil will get stuck onto the paper, and I didn't want that. So now that it's all dried, it has the really cool effect. Now I was just showing you that, like I said, some part of the gold flecks were coming off of the paper, especially on the edges, and I didn't really know what to do with them. There was a part where I had pulled the washi and actually kind of ripped part of the paper, but I'm just gonna move ahead and move forward and not worry about that. I did stamp and heat embossed a sentiment onto the smallest label, and then I die cut a green label, a label from a green cardstock, and then that's going to be my background. Now it looks a little bit plain, and so I'm going to add some ribbon to that, and I was just trying to figure out where I could put the ribbon, and I ended up putting it on the side of it. And actually, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is the last of that silk, or that satin ribbon, I should say. So I used up all of that ribbon, which makes me really happy, because I initially thought that I wouldn't be able to use it all up. Okay, so we are on card number 7, and this is another one of my favorites from this set. It's pretty simple, but I love the results of it. And the inspiration came from this simple stamp that's part of the Technique Tuesday that I pulled out, where it just had 3 Marys, 3 of the word Mary on there, and they were just one on top of the other, and I thought it would be nice to create a background with that, and so I am using just that stamp, and I am going to be using 3 different colors. I figured I would use the kind of traditional red and green, but kind of in different hues. So the one is kind of pinkish, and let me see if I had written down the no, I don't think I wrote down the colors of the ink pads, but the green is the same one that I used for card number 1, and this is kind of a pinkish red, and then I'm also using tea dye, that I know for sure, the brown ink that I'm adding in my trio here, because I didn't want it to be just red and green. I don't know, I wanted to break it up. So that's what I'm doing here. And here I'm just kind of finishing it off. As you can see, I kind of jump from one color to another, cleaning my stamp really well in between. So that is my background, and I love how that turned out. It's really fun. Now again, this is another card that you can, probably gonna take you a while to mass produce this because of all the stamping that goes with it, but I think it's really a neat idea or neat card to make, especially when you have very limited stamps, because as you can see, even with just that single stamp, I was able to create this background, and it looked like it was pattern paper. So that was fun. Now I did color this the Santa, and I think I did write down the markers for that. So I used IG3, GG2, BGR2, TN1, BP1, and LG4 for coloring the Santa. And again, I used Spectrum Noir markers for that. So my initial thought was that I was going to put that Santa and I'm going to be putting the doily behind it so that it will have something to rest on. However, I felt like the doily was just too big, and I spent all that time stamping the background and might as well, you know, showcase that. And so I have this leftover label that I had wanted to use for another card, but ended up not using. And so I decided to use that, but because it was white, it just seems like the Santa was just getting lost. So I colored it in with the same kind of pinkish red that I used for the stamping for the background. And because I used the ink already, it matched the background as well. So I left the center of it kind of blank because it's going to be covered by the Santa anyways. And I did, before I adhered it, misted it with some kind of just glittery shimmery mist from Maya Road, and then let that dry, and then now I'm ready to adhere everything. So I will pop up that Santa. That's the only thing that I will pop up, and then everything else is done. I think I would add some Nouveau drops to the corners of the background, just because again I have that Nouveau drop already on my table, so why not? And that is card number 7. So on to card number 8. The inspiration to this is that I wanted to do some kind of like an ornament type look, and I figured I can use the images, the Santa and the elf image, and then cut out some of that label, and then kind of layer that as kind of my ornaments. And I did use the ho 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 for my sentiment. I stamped and heat embossed that with the silver embossing powder. Again, I'm doing my technique of adding some stitches to the edges of my cards with a tracing tool, a sewing tracing tool, and just my ruler. And then I have die cut some labels, the same size labels from different pattern papers, and that's going to be kind of the base of my ornaments. And I'm just kind of figuring out how I'm going to do this. I wanted to do 3 for sure, and I wanted the sentiment to be kind of center bottom, so that kind of holds, I don't know, in my eye it holds most of the weight of the card, meaning that the eye will visually go straight to the sentiment. That's how I thought about it in my head anyways. When I explain it now, it just seems kind of like far-fetched, but it is what it is. So I'm just adhering that now. And then of course I'm going to trim the edges of the 2 top ones, but I wanted the elements to have some hanging effect, and so I am going to add a punched out the top of it, and then I am going to pull out a red twine, and then I'm going to kind of position that so that it looks like it's hanging. And I have to move that down a little bit because I wanted the images to fit right perfectly inside each of those frames. So I'm just going to repeat the process for all of the ornaments and kind of hanging them, making sure that there's enough twine for each of them so that I can just tuck the ends of it in the back of that paper. And I'm just going to use some washi for that. So I'm just taping that off. I guess in the beginning I thought that I would put some some foam adhesive with that, but I just ended up doing just adhering them to the label themselves. Trying to find some washi, so you only see the a very small part of my table when I'm filming, because I zoom in my lens so that you will see just the little spot where I make my card, but you don't see the mess that is surrounding this part of my table. And so I had a washi, and I was looking all over it. I could not find it, and so I had to go and run to my little washi container and just grab one so that I can finish off this card. But yeah, it was a big mess. And so now I'm going to adhere that to my card base, which I believe is just a cream one, and then that's going to do it for this particular card. I hope that you guys are liking these kinds of videos. I do like to make them, but I can only make them every other month just because it's a little bit more time consuming than my usual card making. When I make these cards, it usually takes me almost 4 days to plan, to prep, to film, and then another day, well, of course not a full 24 hours, but another day to do the process videos and also to photograph them. But I hope that you guys are liking it. If you do like these kinds of videos, please give it a thumbs up and please share, because that's the only way for me to be able to keep on doing this, is if YouTube recognizes that people are actually watching my videos, then they can keep me kind of in good standing with them, and I could be able to still make these videos and be able to get into their, what is that, like the little plan that they have, so that you can monetize, so that I can monetize my videos. There you go. Trying to think of the word, I couldn't find it. So on to card number 9. So with this one, my idea was to use a lot of these small sentiments, just kind of put them in a whole strip, and then of course highlight the sentiment that I want to be the overall sentiment for the card. And so I'm lining them up over here, and I figured that I would use my Tim Holtz stamp positioner, because then I would be able to restamp them if I need to. But I think because the stamps didn't come, well, I'm mostly using a lot of the stamps from the Simon Says stamp piece or this kit, but I am going to use some of the Technique Tuesday stamp set. They're not kind of the same height, and so I was having problems with the way the stamp was, the way it was stamping on my paper. Some of the parts of it wasn't so crisp, and others, which it's just a hot mess. And so as you can see here, I'm still kind of figuring out which kind of words I'm going to use, and I'm going to end up using the Merry Christmas for like my title for my card. And I'm just kind of moving it around. I did use the magnets so that my paper doesn't move, and I'm sorry that my head is in the way. I wanted to make sure that they all lined up before I close the door so that they can all be adhered. But again, because they're not from the same stamp set, they were not, like, it's not even. And so when I was stamping it, and then I was making the mistake of like using my washi so that I can cover some of that ink, because I wanted everything black but my bold or my card sentiment, but I keep on forgetting to pull out the washi. I have no idea why I was doing that, and as you can see, it wasn't working. And I'm going to get another paper and I'm going to try to do it again, and it's still not working even after all the pushing that I did. And finally I gave up on this and actually just used my my little stamping block, and that worked well. And even though it just shows you that even though you have a stamp positioner, I don't know, for me, I know it's just human error, but for me sometimes using a stamping block is just so much easier than the stamp positioner. So of course I'm not gonna give up on this just quite yet, but now I think I am. So here I'm gonna go back to my pad here, and I'm gonna tape that so it doesn't move, and then I'm gonna start stamping them. And what I'm doing is I'm just pulling them out of the stamp positioner door and then moving them on my block. And then because this mat has some lines to it, it actually helped me to make sure that it's straight. And that's really why I wanted the stamp positioner, is I wanted to make sure that my words are straight, and I was able to still do that with this mat. The only thing is that I'm not able to restamp it because, you know, my hands are moving and the stamps, it's not really sure that my stamp will be able to stamp right where I wanted it to be. But you know, when you have a clear stamping block, I think you could try, but sometimes I'm lucky that I could get it right where I wanted it to restamp, but most of the time I don't. And so I'm just gonna move forward and not worry about it, because really it's just kind of a design on that strip of paper, and the Merry Christmas is the important one, because that is the card sentiment that I wanted to focus on. And then I'm gonna cut this into a notch, wrap some twine on top of it, and then have a doily in the back of it. And then that will be kind of the bulk of the design. But I am going to add a few more things here. So now that I'm finished with that, and this is just a strip of the scrap of paper, the back side is a pattern that I don't really care for anymore, and then I'm just gonna use the white side. So there's that, and I'm gonna wrap that with some twine. I think I'm going to wrap it 3 times, and this is the same twine that I used for the card just before it. I like to kind of just use the stuff that I already have on my table, because why not? And so I'm going to be taping that with more washi just to secure the back side of it. And then I'm going to finish it off with a bow. And then just because the background is looking a little plain to me, I will be adding some snowflake stamps on there. So I'm going to stamp the 2 snowflakes in 3 different positions, and I'm going to use some Versamark ink, and then I'm going to heat emboss those snowflakes. So just to add a little bit of something to the background, because it was feeling a little bit plain to me. So I'm going to position back the doily just to make sure that I am going to be stamping the snowflakes someplace where it's actually going to be seen and not covered up with the doily, because sometimes, you know, it's kind of a frustrating thing where you stamp something and then you end up covering it anyways with something that you've already planned to go on top of it. So I'm going to move that, and I'm actually going to I stopped the video and then heat emboss that, because my heat emboss, or my gun, is in a different part of my room, and so I have to move it, and the camera can only stay on this side of the room. So that's my layout right, or not layout, sorry, that is my card right there. And I think I am going to add some new wood drops there. Oh, and part of the Mary was kind of missing, so I just grabbed my red marker to color that in. And then I'm adding some tape or some dots of glue just to make sure that it stays where it should. And I ran out of my ATG gun, so now I'm using some glue dots, just some craft glue dots, to adhere that to the card base. And then I'm gonna be pulling out my Nuvo drops here soon and add just a little bit of drop in that space between the Merry and the Christmas, because it was just, I don't know, missing something in my eyes. And that's gonna do it. So we are on card number 10. Now this card looks a little plain when it ended, but I had some major ideas for this one. So I had already added some stitched edges on the square and also this strip of paper that I wanted to add in the center, and then I had die cut this green, and my idea was that I was going to create a flower from the leftover red ribbon, that because I had 2 ribbons that I pulled out for this particular kit, and I was going to add the other kind of lighter shade red. I was going to add that to this label and kind of create a flower out of it. And I'm using a very large glue dot. I think this is like 2.5 inch, and I don't know if they still sell these big dots, but I still have them in my stash, so I'm using it. And so I had this bright idea of like just twirling and twisting and to create a flower. However, you will see me later that it will not work out the way I had envisioned it to be. So, but I'm just going to still twirl it around. I had all good intentions for this, and my finger kept on getting stuck in that glue dot, and I just had to pry it out, and I was trying to see if I can kind of, you know, move the flower, or move the ribbon to make some petals that would resemble a flower, but at the end it would just look like a big honking mess. And I used up all my ribbon, which is fine, you know, sometimes you experiment, but it was awful. As you can see, I did not like it at all. And so I just grabbed a white flower in my stash because I did not feel like doing anything too technical for this card. It's number 10 card. So anyways, I did stamp and heat emboss the season's greetings, and then I found this flare badge from my stash, and then I'm gonna just put that in the center. Since I have used a lot of, like, you know, images and some of the other cards, I thought that this not panda oh my goodness, I am losing the I don't know what it's called now. Anyways, that is my card, and then I'll show you what the finished product looked like. And I'm sorry the glare of the sunshine was there, but these are my 10 cards. Penguin, that's what I thought. Oh my goodness, I am losing my mind here. So yeah, there was a penguin flare for my number 10 card, and I just used a white flower that I had in my stash. And so those are my 10 cards, and I'm going to show you what is left over. There were no more ribbons at all. There's a ton more doilies. Of course, my tools are still there, and that's just going to go back in my stash. And my papers, there's not a lot left. So I'm still thinking of just maybe keeping that just for keeping it. And then because I like to do more cards if I can, I did do 4 more cards, and this one I just used some with the holly. I just used some shimmer or glimmer mist, I should say, and then for the other one, just scraps of pattern paper. And there you have it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys another day. Bye.